Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we're bringing back Anthony Campolo. How you doing, Anthony?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me back.
Yeah, happy to have you back. It's been a minute. So for folks who aren't familiar with you, and actually, you know what? I think the last time you were here, you had a different job. So maybe we should
I didn't have a
maybe
job at
we should.
all.
Oh, you did. All right then. All right then. Let's talk about what's changed. You want to give folks who aren't familiar with your work a bit of a background?
Sure. I was a music teacher who switched careers into tech via the bootcamp route slash kind of contributing to open source route. So when I was on the show last time, it was December 2020, and it was actually like the
Mm,
day I got onto the Redwood core team. So that was basically how I was breaking into the industry, was by becoming kind of the de facto like developer advocate for Redwood. And then
mm,
the month after that is when I actually got my first tech job, which was working for StepZen. And it's a GraphQL API company. You actually had Carlos on quite a few
mhm.
months ago now. So that was awesome. And just like I'm a very big proponent of open source and, kind of leveraging it to both learn things and make connections and possibly get a job, because I definitely am lucky in how it all worked out, but I think it's a path that others can take if they really want to.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I love the story of the career switcher, right? Being able to kind of see some potential and decide to go to a boot camp, and within a year in a lot of cases you can be from I don't know anything about tech to being gainfully employed as a developer or somewhere else in tech. So yeah, I love that story. So you said that you one of the first things you did was kind of get into Redwood as the de facto DevRel, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So what drew you to Redwood?
Yeah, there's a couple things. The main one is that when I was in my boot camp, I was learning like a full stack web development kind of curriculum that was very heavy on React. And so building like a full stack React app that was like a React front end talking to like an Express Postgres backend that was like managing auth, and just then you have to deploy that somewhere. And it was very challenging to do as like a beginner into tech, because you're learning to code. You're learning just what programming languages are at all. So you're learning JavaScript, you're learning SQL, and you're trying to figure out how your development machine works, and all this kind of stuff combines to be incredibly challenging. And so Redwood is basically saying, hey, we're going to give you a framework with conventions that's going to make this all much easier to do, and is going to like make sense front to back, and how the auth is managed and how the database is accessed and all that stuff. So it wasn't like a new idea. Like, it's very much compared to things like Ruby on Rails. You have, Tom
Mhm.
Preston Warner, who built GitHub with Rails. So you have a lot of crossover there. But at the time, I was just like, I just need a thing that works. And it was a thing that worked in a way that wasn't really possible for me to do at the time with the skills and technologies I knew.
Mm. So it's yeah, I mean I think the appeal of something like Rails is that it's batteries included, and Redwood has a lot of parallels with that, as you said. Um, so for somebody who is kind of evaluating frameworks, what would you say are the big trade-offs of Redwood? Like what do you gain and what do you lose by choosing Redwood versus other tools?
Yeah, definitely. So the main things are going to be, you're going to have a more opinionated backend than you would have with a framework like Next, or even with Remix, because Remix is more full stack and gives you the ability to hook into databases with like Prisma, but they don't bake it into the framework the same way that Redwood does. So with Redwood,
Mm,
Prisma is like in the Redwood CLI. Like, you run commands that look like Redwood commands, but they're really aliasing Prisma. Whereas with something like Remix, you're going to install Prisma and you're going to set it up yourself. So this is the same thing with auth. Like, you can set up auth very easily in Remix, but with Redwood, you'll run a command that will actually write your auth code for you for the most part.
I
So
gotcha.
you have to be more bought into whatever solutions they're going to give you, which the flip side, which is really nice, is that they have lots of both like homeworld versions and third party versions of like auths. Like, we're going to do today, like kind of self-hosted manage our own auth essentially. But if you want to use like a
Okay.
third party thing, you can do that. So that's going to be the things you gain. And then what the trade-off is that you have to be bought into whatever tech you're going to use, and hope that they have selected the right libraries or given you the right path to have something that works and functions. And so that just comes from the experience of the team and the community and the startups building on it. There's like a lot of eyes on it, a lot of kind of like flywheel effect going on. So yeah, I
Mm.
think it's in a good place right now, and it's a good time to like kind of learn and start wrapping your mind around it because we are kind of approaching like V1 now.
Yeah, I mean, approaching, it sounds like you're at V1, right? Like we're going to be working with V1 today. It's just a release candidate instead of the final. But really, a release candidate usually means that we're within like days or a week or two of seeing something go live, right?
Yeah, so with a release candidate, the idea is that it's like a guaranteed contract that they're not going to be breaking changes from here. That whatever you're writing on the release candidate, you should be able to just basically bump the number to once we do
Mm.
have one available, and it's just going to work. So it's upcoming within, I would say, like the next month or so, and we're going to have actually like kind of a launch week type thing where we're going to have
Oh,
lots of
nice.
our partners and coming together to talk about like how you integrate Redwood with different things, and just like there's a lot of people who built a lot of stuff in like a lot of different pockets and niches and things. So that's coming up. That hasn't been announced yet, so there's no like hard date, but that's the hard date for that is coming up very, very soon. So I just don't want to jump the gun on any of that. But basically, like
Sure, sure,
we're
sure.
now setting up this like big release for V1, and so the code stuff is basically settled right now. It's just like last minute bug fixes and stuff like that.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, and so this is I'm not sure how this happened, but it just lined up really well where we're getting a lot of sneak previews on Learn with Jason this last few weeks. And so I'm really excited to get a sneak preview of what we're getting into with 1.0 because we did a Redwood episode before. And so I will pull that up and let's see, when did that one happen? It happened
It was December 2020.
December. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So about a year and a half ago now. Um, and so what's new from that episode that's particularly notable in 1.0?
Yeah. There's a lot, but the things we're going to kind of focus on today are going to be being able to actually manage your own auth. So when it was first set up, it was set up with Netlify Identity as kind of the auth solution. So that is like people don't necessarily want to have to buy into like a specific service to do like an
Sure.
auth. So lots of people do like using it. It's very, very simple, but it's the kind of thing that you want to be more portable than that. So
Hmm.
that's the main thing is you have like your own kind of, so you'll have like passwords that you're going to salt and hash, and Redwood does that all for you. And
Nice.
then the other big thing is that now you can actually run it on a server. And this is kind of funny because Redwood
Okay.
was kind of originally proposed as like this serverless first framework that was going to let you do everything from like lambdas up. Like you would never need to actually run a real server. And you were able to do that. But the problem is like it's Redwood is by definition a serverless anti-pattern because it's a lambda-lith. Like it's one giant lambda monolith. It's a GraphQL server that you shove into a single lambda, and like that doesn't scale. So if you actually end up kind of pushing the boundaries of what you want to do in production, then at a certain point you really just kind of want to run it on a server. So we gave people the ability to just run it on a server very, very easily without having to change any of your
Nice,
code.
nice. And
Yeah.
chat, we now have an excellent idea for some fan art here. We need to know what the lambda lith looks like. Okay, so yeah, so and I get that. Like it's always a little like serverless is great, but if you're trying to shoehorn a full server into serverless functions, are you getting any benefit out of it, right? I think
Mhm.
so then being able to have a server full version makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so you can host it on a server. It's got different auth solutions in it.
Mhm.
Any other notable features that we should call out here?
It's less, so there's little things like meta tags and like more kind of stuff for like SEO, but there's also a lot more integrations just with other providers. So the amount of ways you can host it is just like insane now because you can do Netlify, Vercel, Render, Fly, Layer Zero, Flight Control,
Hmm.
and I think those are the main ones. So that's like six different ways you can kind of deploy it. And then
And that's before you start looking at roll your own solutions like AWS or GCP or things like that
yeah, it's
too.
serverless framework. That's actually one that wasn't that far out
Oh
of that
yeah,
list. Yeah,
serverless framework.
yeah. So that will let actually deploy it straight to AWS, and actually Flight Control does the same thing. That will
Oh,
give
nice.
you just actual AWS kind of stuff. So yeah, there's just like the whole spectrum of totally managed to you manage almost everything yourself and everything like kind of along
Mm.
that spectrum. There's like kind of something for everyone at this point, which is
Yeah.
really cool. And kind of the great thing about it is it was kind of proposed as this universal deployment machine was a term that Tom used a lot. So this is kind of like the
Okay.
fruition of that. Like once you actually find all these different ways to deploy it, it's really interesting.
Yeah. And so you just said something that I thought was interesting, which is you called out like meta tags and SEO as being a feature of the framework.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be something that's worth calling out because when I think frameworks, I'm usually thinking, oh, I'm going to need to go get a plugin, or I'm going to need to get some third party tool, or I'm going to have to roll my own when I get to SEO tags and I need to add, whatever meta tags and things like that. I'm always opening up the boilerplate HTML file, and I got to drop in my own like Twitter cards and
Mm-hmm.
OG data and stuff like that. So you're saying that Redwood bakes that into the framework for you?
Yeah, so there's a meta tag where you can just
Oh.
kind of pass in like name, description, anything like that. Yeah. And this kind of goes along with there's pre-render too for the front end. So there's stuff to kind of alleviate some of the challenges that come with single page applications.
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool. So, are there other built-ins like that, like SEO and meta that might surprise devs who are used to working with things like, Next or the solutions where you kind of have to roll your own
Yeah,
front-end
definitely. So
solutions?
another one is accessibility, and this is something that Dom has worked a
Okay.
lot on, where things like when you try and navigate in a single page app, it can confuse the screen reader's like navigation because it doesn't necessarily know whether the page has changed or not. So there's like a route announcement component that kind of got baked in. So when you're switching between pages, like your screen reader doesn't break. So there's things like that if you were using frameworks like now, I think things like Gatsby and Next do have this kind of stuff, but a couple of years ago this was still like kind of a huge unsolved problem. And so Dom was looking at research from like Next and Gatsby on kind of like how you make basically single page application routers more accessible. And so that stuff that's now baked into the framework as well, which is really, really cool.
Nice. Nice. That's really cool. Um, yeah, that's excellent. All right. So, do you have I guess a core set of use cases that Redwood really excels at? Like what are the best use cases for Redwood? And conversely, like when are some cases where you might not want to look at Redwood?
Yeah. What's funny is we use like a blog as kind of like the main example in the tutorial. And usually when I'm kind of spinning up simple versions of it, you'll have like, a post model and whatever. But a blog is not really a good thing to build with it. It's more for like dashboards, data intensive apps, apps with users, apps that just have a lot of interactivity and
Okay.
just like a database backed CRUD app, that kind of thing. So that's really what it's aimed at. And then especially having users is something that I emphasize a lot just because of how much auth is baked into it.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So, I guess there's a lot that we could dig into in the abstract here, but it's feeling like maybe the right thing to do here is to actually just dig in and get our hands dirty. So why don't we switch over to camera two? Camera two. Uh, we just got booped. Oh, okay. So this is a fun thing that just happened. All the boops
Infinite
that
boop.
got dropped earlier queued and then dropped as we opened up this. That's fun. That's a thing that I've never seen happen before. All right. So lots and lots of boops happening. Thank you, Ben, for all of those. This episode, like all episodes, is being captioned by White Coat Captioning. We've got Amanda here with us today. Thank you very much, Amanda. And that is made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, NX, and Backlight, all kicking in to make this show more accessible and to just help us do fun things like build a boop drop. So thank you all very much for that. We are talking to Anthony today. You can find Anthony on Twitter here. Make sure you go and give a follow. And we're talking about RedwoodJS. There's a link there. With that, I think that's all the things that I know. So what should I do next if I'm ready to start here?
Yeah, so I have a repo set up for you that you can fork and then just start working off of the.
Okay,
This
that's
is
this one that you sent me ahead of time. So
Yep.
I will drop this into the chat if anybody wants to follow along. And then I'm going to hit this fork button. Put it
And
over
this
on the
is going to
learn with
be
Jason
pretty
org.
much what you would get just from running create Redwood app, but it's upgraded to the release candidate. So in the README, it says if you wanted to do that from scratch, you would just run this command and that will bump you up to the release candidate.
Got it. The RC. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. And then
All
just clone
right.
it down and run yarn install, and then that'll get your dependencies going. So the one thing that is worth noting for people who are seeing this for the first time, yarn is required for Redwood because it kind of predates before npm could do like workspaces. So that is kind of the main thing you're going to be doing for all your commands. It's going to be yarn space and then rw for Redwood, and then what the command is.
All right. So there it is.
Nice.
Forgot
Volta's
that I
the
switched
best.
to Volta on this. I hadn't used it before
I love
very
Volta.
recently. It's great. I like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, here's yarn. We're installing our packages, and I did a quick ls over here so we can see what's going on. So we've got like a node version, prettier config, Redwood toml. We'll have to peek at that. A lock file, testing setup, a GraphQL setup. And then it looks like, yeah, environment variables over here, API folder, web folder, scripts folder. All right. And with that,
Yeah,
where
and
it looks like we're
the
getting close. There
config
it is.
you don't really need to mess with at all. The main thing is going to be the web folder and the API folders where all the code we're going to be working with will be.
Okay, so here's our API folder. And this has server config. It's got source. So there's a bunch of stuff over here. Database. We've got a Prisma schema. Seen Prisma show up as a built-in to more and more frameworks, which is interesting.
Oh yeah,
It's
Prisma's amazing.
cool to see them grow.
Yeah.
So here's source, got app routes. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So in the abstract, I understand what's going on here. What should I do if I want to get started? Like, should we just start this thing up and roll?
Yeah, so start by just starting your development server. So it'll be yarn space rw space dev, and that's going to kick off the development server. And since we don't have any pages right now, it has kind of a default splash page that is going to show us. But last time when I was on here, we kind of did like a page and then like worked backwards to the database. But I'm actually going to do it reverse this time. We're going to start from the database and with just the API, because that's going to be factoring a lot more to what we're doing today. So
Sure.
the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to go to our schema.prisma file so we can create our schema. So change
All right.
SQLite at the top to PostgreSQL first off. And what's happening here, for anyone who's never seen a Prisma schema, is we're defining our database. So you could do SQLite, Postgres, MySQL, MongoDB, which is really interesting, or like Microsoft SQL, something like that. And then we're going to define a model. And so the model will be a post model instead of
Am I
user
keeping
example.
this user example?
Yeah, keep pretty much all that for now, and then
Okay.
change user example. Sorry, so like rename user example to post.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. And then because you want to keep the ID exactly the same, so that's just like giving you an auto incrementing ID.
Gotcha.
And then
Gotcha. Gotcha.
change email to title, and then get rid of the unique constraint. Yeah, and then and then make that say body instead of name, and then string. Yeah, and
We probably want
then
that to be required, right? Like we don't want an optional body.
yeah.
Okay, and the question mark for folks who haven't seen a Prisma schema file before, that's what would make it optional.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
okay,
then
so
just
we've got a
one
basic
more
post
will be created at, which will be a date time.
created at, oh, and look,
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Copilot knows how to do it.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, so we're defaulting it to now. So when you create the post, it will pull a timestamp of the current moment, which is great.
Great, and that's it. So that's going to be the whole schema that we'll be working with. And then now create a .env file. So this is one thing that if you just started by and do it in the very root of your whole project. And this is something that if you just did like a generate project from the beginning, you would have a .env, but because you cloned it down, it doesn't have one because it's in your git ignore, because you don't want to commit this file. This is where all the important stuff is going to go.
Right. So here's my .env.
Great. And then now so the very top one, database URL, that's what we're going to use. but we're going to spin up a database. So this is where we're going to use Railway. So Railway
Okay, so
is a really nice kind of hosting service for databases or servers or just any kind of thing you wanna host. And so we're gonna just spin up like a Postgres database. That's all we're gonna use this for. So create a new project.
new project,
Yeah, and then just select the Postgres one. Yeah,
Postgres.
yeah. So you've never heard of Railway? So I know you haven't used it.
I've never used Railway before. No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been the way we've had the tutorial do the database part because it's just like a really, really easy way to spin up and get going. So if you have click Postgres, then you'll be able to then go to connect and connect to your database. And this will blur out your password, but you're going to
Oh,
want to
nice. Okay.
make sure to manage that off screen when you do that. So you just
Okay.
grab that and then put it in your database URL.
Got it. All right. So do I want the connection URL, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, it also
So I'm
gives
going
like
to
a
put that
psql
here.
command, which is
So I'll
great.
move this off of
Yep.
off screen. Let's see. There it is. Postgres. It's got username and password and a URL. All right. Do I need to put anything else in this .env?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. So I'm going to close the .env and I'm coming back over.
Yep.
All right. Are we going to be in Railway anymore here?
No, we might want to pop back once we have data in it, but for now you can kind of just leave it off screen.
Okay.
Don't need to
So
worry about it too much.
Cleared the sensitive data, so we're back over here now. We'll have that ready if we need it. And otherwise, let's see, we're not going to need that anymore.
Yeah, so now let's go back to
ready.
the terminal so we can run some commands. And since we're adding environment variables, we'll stop the server. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're going to run yarn rw prisma and then migrate and then dev. And this is a useful trick. Then do -- name and then posts. So this way, if you just run this, it'll just do the migration. Because otherwise, it asks you like, "What do you want to name your migrations?" So this kind of skips that step.
I gotcha. Okay.
Just does the thing, and then this is going to set up our database. It basically writes some SQL to create like a table for the model, and then just applies it to the database. And then it also gives you like the actual SQL that it generated as well, if you want to kind of look at that.
Yeah, if we want to look, this is a cool thing that I like about Prisma is it's not giving you like secrets here. It's just if you need to see what happened, you can go over here, and if you've got if I as someone who's not a DB admin go in and make some changes, the changes that I made can be reviewed by a DB admin who can say like you shouldn't have done that, right? As opposed to me saying, well, I ran a command, and they're like, oh, well, okay, now I got to go dig through somebody's source code to figure out what that command actually does under the hood. I like that you can actually see the SQL that was run.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So I've run it. It looks like our database is now in sync with our schema. That's very cool. And so that one command that we just ran by defining our schema in Prisma, that set up Railway for us because we put that connection string in.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Nice.
it basically creates like there's then a table that is your migrations, and so that is like so it creates a table. Yeah, so go into here in the data, so you see the Prism migration and then the actual post table.
Wow, that was okay. So this is incredible because I come from like I was building websites before jQuery existed, and so a lot of what I was doing was opening up these old tools that like I remember being in PHP MyAdmin when I was trying to use like the LAMP stack together and managing tables like this. I was on a production box, I'd set SSH'd in, and then I was running like I'd start my SQL inside of the SSH boxes. It was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where I am. I feel like I'm about ready to take down my whole system. Definitely did take down the whole system a couple times. This is just so much nicer. Like, I can't believe how far this is all come.
Totally. And like this isn't even the only one. Like Supabase is just as nice. And there's so many ways to host databases.
Yeah,
I mean, plant scale if you want to do MySQL. So this is just like one of a plethora of awesome options now.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so we got a database. What happens next?
All right, now we're going to scaffold like what you're just kind of saying, an actual admin UI in Redwood. So we're going to do another command, which is going to be yarn rw, and then just the letter G, and that's short for generate, and then scaffold. Yep, and then post. Yep, that's it. And then that's going to take the model and basically create like this whole CRUD UI to do the stuff. Yeah, so you got an
Whoa.
SDL and services. So if you go to post, yeah, this is where these are like Prisma commands essentially. So
Uh-huh.
that's create post, update post, delete post, and then that maps to if then you go post.sdl.js, then that's your GraphQL schema that it generates.
Slick.
You know,
Okay. All right. I see what's
and
going
then
on
there's
here.
a whole bunch of React components and stuff too. But before we kind of look at all that code, let's see what this actually like does first. So let's
Yeah.
kick the server back on again. So yarn redwood dev.
That little moment there brought to you by being willing to press up 1,000 times rather than type another command.
And now
Um,
go /posts. So it created a post. Oh yeah, there you go. And then go ahead and create
no
a post.
kidding. All right.
That's funny. This is the part that got you last time too.
Yeah. This is my goldfish memory really coming into play here because I have no memory of doing this before. Then we can edit it. Hot diggity dog, y'all. This is pretty incredible.
Yeah, pretty sweet. And this is just kind of like us reaching into the API right now, and we didn't have to like write any front end code at all. But now what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna generate a page and use a cell to query the page. So
Okay.
I'll kind of explain what that is once you actually like have the code in front of us. And I just realized
Yeah.
it's very loud.
It's all right.
So,
Is that a leaf blower?
yes, hopefully it's
They're like
not
the
too bad.
bane of video existence. All right. So
All
I'm
right, so
assuming I
now,
start with yarn redwood.
yep. Now we're gonna generate, but a page this time instead of scaffold. Yep, and then do the word home, and then space /. So what this is going to do is this is going to create a home page that is mapped to just our like / route. So if you're on example.com, that would be what would come up.
Okay.
Yep.
And
And
so
then
going back here then, if I look
yep,
at my web, that just changed. Like what did that
pages.
change?
So pages,
Pages,
and then
home
homepage,
page.
and homepage.js. And so you also have a storybook file and a test file as well.
All right. Special guest today, the leaf blower. All right. So we have now with two command, well, what, three commands so far, and one definition of a schema. We've set up a database. We have configured that database with our schema. We built an admin dashboard for managing those posts, and we've now created a homepage. And so I think the last dot to connect here is getting the posts that we created onto this homepage. And I heard you say the word sell.
Yep. So we're going to do one more generate command. It'll be
Okay.
yarn rw generate and now cell,
Okay.
and do capital B, and then blog, and then post the capital P.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whole thing. Okay.
Yep. And then what a cell is, it's a GraphQL query combined with different basically states that your data fetching can be in. So loading, empty, failure, or success. So pretty standard stuff for people who've ever done this kind of stuff, but you don't have to write like the conditional logic to do this yourself. It just gives it
Mm-hmm.
to you out of the box. So you have error handling built in and all that kind of stuff.
Very nice.
You know, and we're only have to change a couple things. So in the three places it says blog posts for the query, yeah, change all three of those to just the word posts, all underscore, all lowercase. Yeah,
Okay.
cool. And then in the query, add in title, body, and created at. So at the very top. Yeah, so that's the GraphQL query. So you set the query at the top, and then you can kind of have it come out in the success however you want. So I think
Sure.
that's good. So right now it's just going to spit out some JSON for us. So let's just save that. And now we need to import this onto our homepage. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to import and
no
go back over
curlies, just
here.
blog post cells or blog post cell. Yeah.
Wait, how does that work? Because it's not a default export.
Yeah, so Babel magic is how.
Babel magic. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to go back here and get blog post cell.
So yeah. And then that'll be from, and then it'll be src because it does the mapping for you. And then / components, and then / blog. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, just like that.
And then I can
just drop it in there.
Right, all right.
Cool. And then you can also get rid of that top line as well.
Not using that anymore.
Yeah. And there's the meta tags thing I was talking about, by the way.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very handy to just have that kind of like put in there for you as well.
All right, there we go.
There's our post. Okay, so then if I come back here, where was it? One of these, this one. And I create a new one and I say a second post. Save it. Come back out here. Now we got 2 posts. All right, so this is, you know, in the simplest sense of the word, finished, because we now have the ability to create posts and read posts and display them on a page. And we did all that. I lost count here, but I think we've written 15 lines of code or so.
Yeah, not a lot, but
Yeah,
it's
not
not done
bad.
though because we don't have auth yet.
True,
So if we put
true,
this
true.
online, anyone could just go that route and create posts. This is actually what
That's
happened when
true. And
we
we
built this the first time, and you can
we
still see
have
all the
learned
posts people put up.
cannot trust the chat. They will do the worst things because they're, you know, chat, I believe deep down that you're all good people, but you try to prove that wrong all the time.
You dirty hackers.
That's you. All right. Okay, so let's add some auth.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to do a setup command. So the setup commands are not quite like generator commands because they won't create as much like code and files. It usually kind of changes some things in your project. So this will be yarn redwood setup auth. Yep. Okay. And then db, both underscore, and then capital A, and then auth. So that'll be all one word, db auth.
Oh, db auth. Got it.
Yeah.
Behold, my bucket.
All right. So this is the full command.
Yeah, that should do it.
Okay. Do you want to talk me through what this piece is? Is this a name?
I have a better idea. First, can you initialize a Git repo? Or actually, no, you are in a Git repo. Can you just commit everything you're on right now? And then when we run this command, we'll look at the diff. This is a really good way to see what it actually changes.
Okay. So I'm going to commit and say posts are working, needs auth. Okay.
Cool.
Now I'm going to run yarn redwood setup auth db auth. Now, yeah. Okay, so I'm running a setup command. Auth is the setup command I'm running, and this is the name.
Yeah, there's other setup commands, which would be like a deploy one. So that will configure for like Netlify or render or something like that. And so there's setup for auth, and then there's setup for deployment targets.
Okay. Am I overriding
yes, you do want to overwrite. Yes.
Okay.
Cool. And now if we go back to our editor, as that's going, we'll start to see the diffs that are changing.
Okay, so this blew the whole thing away. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And so we get forgot password options, login options, reset password, sign up. There's a hashed password. Okay, so we're going to hash passwords. Details. Okay. All right. So it's doing some stuff there. Let's look over here. We get the current user, check if they're authenticated, check if they have a role. Oh, so we're getting into role-based auth too. Like this is pretty cool.
And
Getting
then
the
app.
GraphQL.
Yeah, so that it basically this is your API, like the final handler that it spits out.
Mhm.
So this is where you take the SDLs and services, kind of map it all together, and then this is the front end where you have the auth provider that wraps your routes and your Apollo provider.
Gotcha. Okay, so this did a lot without us having to do much of anything, and it did stuff that, like, I think I've talked about this a lot. Where my beef with a lot of auto generation stuff is that sometimes it does all the things that I care about and none of the stuff that I want it to care about. Like people will auto generate these like really complex UI components. I'm like, okay, but now I have to go change all of this UI. And then they'll skip the parts. Like it's very much like draw the rest of the owl sort of moment where they're like, oh, here's auth. And then like there's a to-do that's like implement auth here. And I'm like, well, that didn't implement auth. And so what I love about this is that from what I'm seeing, this didn't really touch my UI. What this did was made it so that I need to be logged in order to do certain commands, but it didn't like build out a ton of UI or like change the way that my app functions. It just wrapped it in this auth handler. Is that right?
For now, yes, we will build out more UI stuff later,
Okay.
but this is just one way to do this. Like you don't even have to
Sure.
use that if you don't want to, because what it does is it gives you hooks. So it gives you like a logged in hook and like a sign in, sign out hook, and so you can just use those hooks and build your UI totally from that, or you can use the kind of sign in forms they give you. So this is also something that if you're using Netlify Identity or if you're using something like Clerk, they come with the UIs as well. So if you're using a third party one, you kind of get that. So this is a good one for people who want to manage their own auth, but still don't really want to have to build like the forms and that kind of stuff that goes along with building your own auth.
Right.
Yeah.
It didn't touch the UI yet, says the chat. That's true. That is true. All right. So what's my next step here?
Okay. The next step is, this will be easier for you. Just grab this whole hunk of code from the README. So we have a user model now, and this is going to the other model we'll add to our Prisma.schema. Yeah, so if you go down to keep going, this is all the stuff we already did. Keep going, keep going. Yeah, keep going, keep going. Yeah, right there. There's the user model.
Okay, so I'm going to get my user model. And so let's talk through this. We have an ID. Okay, that makes sense. We have a name. It's optional. Email needs to be unique. That makes sense. You only get one account per email. Got to store your password. Assault. Okay, so early on in my career, I fully publicly humiliated myself by misunderstanding how salts and passwords and hashes worked. And I tried to write an article about security that was so bad that they had to take it down. It was just completely wrong, right? So can we, and I like, part of that is I just got it wrong. And part of that is that this stuff is really hard to understand. So
yeah, oh my God, I know.
Can we talk through a little bit how, like, what does this mean? What does it mean to salt a password? And and I am so sorry if I'm putting you on the spot here. Because
no, I mean, once you get the concept, I don't think it's really that complicated. The main thing is that we won't know the password, and we'll be able to look at this once we create this and that we look at our Railway database, because we'll see what's in our database and we'll see that it's not the password we used to create it. So we are able to basically take the password, run it through an algorithm that does like cryptography on it to spit out a key, and then you can spit out basically multiple keys from keys, and then that's how you end up having ways to verify the original one from the password without having to actually look at the password. So it's basically just like cryptography stuff that is based on encryption, and how do you encrypt it and still access it and verify that it's the thing you think it's supposed to be without having to have it yourself. So that's kind of the purpose of it, and that's kind of what it allows you to have the data saved in your database without having it be exposed. If someone tries to if someone hacks your database and sees what's in it, they won't necessarily get the passwords.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is too, when you're looking at like salts, is so I have a password, right? So let's say my password is the word secret. You shouldn't make that your password. But my password is the word secret, and we're going to put that in a database. Now, if somebody gets that database, they just have my username and password. They can see it right there. So that's bad. Clear text is bad. So the next step would then be, let's use some kind of an algorithm like MD5, SHA-1, one of the other ones, to turn that into a random string. And then in order to check the password, every time I log in, we have to run the hash to generate that hash again. And then we compare that in the database to see if the hashes match. And then we can say this person's logged in. But the problem with that is that then if somebody figures out what algorithm we're using, they can just brute force this. They can run every word in the dictionary, every combination of characters until they find all these hashes. And then they can just start guessing. Like, oh, well, I think your password is this. I think your password is that. So then if they get the database or they get access to the hash table in some way, they can start to do like comparative matching. And once somebody has generated what's called a rainbow table, which is like every possible output hash, then you can just like look if your hash is in the rainbow table and use whatever the password is. Log in. There you go. You now have access. So what Assault does is you give your app or this particular like password hashing thing, a random string that's unique to your app, so that even if I use the same password secret, with two different salts, the hash that ends up in the database is different, right? And why this is important is it means that now someone would have to redo all of that work of guessing every possible password in order to get your set of hashes. Without that, anybody who cracked that one particular algorithm's like full set of hashes, those could be shared around. They'd be applicable to any app. So the salt basically breaks that sharing of rainbow tables. And if any cryptographers are watching, I'm really sorry for all the details I just left out, but that's the general idea. Is Assault is just one added level of extra annoyance to somebody who's trying to crack your table that makes it take longer and makes it less likely to happen. So I hope you pass your CS exam tomorrow. All right, diatribe aside, what's so I have copied this now. And
basically like, but the great thing about that whole segue is that like you didn't have to code that yourself. Like we're getting
right.
that because the framework is doing this for us and already is salting and hashing the passwords for you. So
yeah, and that's, I mean, this is one of those things that I think is really important is like when I first was working on code, I remember building my own login and I had to do this stuff and I got a lot of it wrong. I don't run any of that code in production anymore, but there's a decent chance that had somebody been motivated to, they could have cracked my security because I didn't know like the difference between MD5 and SHA-1. I didn't know how to salt properly or all these other things that I was just like, oh, I just have to like, obfuscate what the plain text password is in my database. That makes sense. Nobody should be able to see the password. I didn't have all the extra layers of context about like attack vectors and ways that people can get the original password. It's like pixelating text, right? Like you look at it, you go, oh yeah, that's secure. And then you watch somebody who's like actually into security immediately reverse engineer whatever was pixelated and tell you what it said. And you're like, oh no.
yeah.
So it's definitely
Security
one of
is a
those,
trip.
yeah, it's a rabbit hole, right? So it's very nice to be able to trust proven methods that are kind of done for you rather than trying to roll your own, unless this is a space that you want to be your career. Like crypto is such a good career. There's so much room to get into the security and the like anti-hacking and all that stuff. There's a huge community of that. If you are interested in that and want to learn more, there are great people on Twitter to follow who can help you get started. But if you're not interested in that, if that's not the thing you want to do for your career, please trust the experts and don't try to roll this on your own because you will be sad. Okay, so I've copy pasted this user model in here. It's going to do all the work for us so that we don't have to be good at security.
All right, and now we need to run a migration to create the user table.
And that was yarn redwood prisma migrate dev.
Yep, and then -- name, and this time users. Yep.
Okay. Off we go.
All right. Now let's go to our routes file in the web folder. So in web src, there's a routes.js file.
Web.
Yeah.
src routes.js.
Yeah. And then in the top import, add the word private. So we're going to bring in the private component.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that's going to wrap the set. And so what's happening here is that we have our routes for our project. So there's a home route right now that we created. And then there's what the scaffold created there, which is all of our posts, like new post and then posts and post ID and all that kind of stuff. And then in private, the top private tag, add now unauthenticated equals home. Yeah.
Like that or like this?
Like the word home, all lowercase.
Home. Got it.
Just like that. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
here. The name. It's the name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So
Okay.
basically, what it does is it redirects you. So if you try to go to
Mhm.
any of those routes, it kicks you back to home.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then theoretically speaking, if I start this right now, when I go to try to hit my post route, it's going to bounce me to the home page.
Yes.
Okay. Let's try it. Just keep hitting up. Up. There we go. No, there it was. No, I had it. There it is. And off we go. And here is my, so this is preloaded. So let me reload the page and see if I can stay here. Get out of here. You don't have permission to do that. I like that it does that. Okay. So it tells me that I'm not allowed. That's fun.
And first, let's do this. Let's make it so we still do see the posts on the homepage because
Okay.
we don't want those to be private. So go to this is going to be back in our SDL, which is in our API folder. So this
API
is pretty
folder.
cool. So this is also new and something that wasn't here before. So under functions, there you go, GraphQL. That's the one. Yeah. So we have
SDL?
require auth. So these are directives. And this is because we're using GraphQL Helix and Envelope under the hood, although we may actually be switching to Yoga at a very soon date. But point is, we're using like Guild GraphQL API servers, and there's a lot of kind of built-in directives to give you like auth and lots of stuff like that. So this is why we can't see it right now, because require auth is on both our both our post queries and our mutations. So we're going to change require auth to skip auth.
Just on the query, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have the ability to read all posts in posts and the ability to get one post by ID. And both of those will work without requiring authentication. And that makes sense because once you've published a post, it is public information. That's the idea. We want someone to be able to see our published posts. That's why we're comfortable skipping auth. But we don't want someone to be able to create, update, or delete posts without auth, which is why we keep it required here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. I got you.
Cool. And now let's run one more command, which will be yarn redwood generate, and then just db auth with the same casing that we've been doing before.
That?
Uh-huh. So this will actually give you the login and sign in form.
Happy authenticating.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, built some files for us.
Okay, let's go back to the README. Also, this is gonna be easier to kind of grab a hunk of code. So you scroll down a little bit more past that. We just did that. Yeah, that right there. That's gonna be our whole kind of login deal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there you go. Also have a couple more imports you're gonna need.
Drop this in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's a couple things we need to import also. So you have to import use auth. Yep. And then that's
auto completed here. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
And then also import a link and routes from Redwood router. And it's because we need to link to the login page on our login button.
Lowercase routes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we'll stack these properly. And then it looks like I need to
Yeah, so const
like
you're gonna
that.
bring in is authenticated and current user and log out. Cool.
Boy, do I love autocomplete.
I know, right? I think that should
Okay.
be it.
All right. Let's give this a shot.
Actually, hold on. Then we gotta just set one other thing. So go to our API src lib folder.
API src lib.
Yeah, and then auth.
Okay.
Yeah, and then go down to current user, and where it says select ID true, add in email true also. Yeah, so comma email true. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And what we're saying here is this is Prisma, but we're able to we're saying which fields to include. So we want the user's ID and their email. And
And
if
the
we
reason why we're
wanted
doing that
more,
is because we want to be able
we
to
could go in
show
and
the
get
email on the page when we're logged in.
right. And so
Yeah.
we could also get like their name. And theoretically you could get this stuff, but probably you shouldn't.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That should be
that.
everything. Now let's
Right.
do the thing and see what happens.
Do the thing. Okay, so here's our homepage. We can see the posts now because they skip off, and we can log in.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have an account, so I'm going to sign up, and we're going to set a username, password. I'm now logged in. Oh, and I set a username, not an email. So that's
Yeah, that's
on
one thing
me
that's
for
a little confusing because we give you an email, but then it kind of says username in the UI. So that's just kind of a little naming thing we have to work out. But this is fine because we don't necessarily need an email to make this work because that's the whole point. Is it's just a password and a username.
Yeah, what'll break on this is all of our password reset flows are probably not going to work anymore because they'll try to email it here. But otherwise, this is all fine, and that's a thing that is relatively straightforward to fix. I would just need to go back and update this to say what, like get in here and just make it say, where is my auth? Is that a thing I can touch, or is that's straight out of Redwood?
So what are you trying to find?
This sign up form that I just used. If we wanted to set that to say email instead of username.
So that's in the front end on one of the pages. I think it's a sign up page.
Sign up page. Yeah. So we'd be able to say sign up, and we would say we can keep username, I guess, but we'll say email, and we'll make this validation required. We'd probably want to set to be something else, but can I set a type on here? No.
Like a TypeScript type?
I was just going to say type email because it's an input, and that way it would yell at me if I tried to put anything other than email.
Right. Yeah, so this is React hook form is where the forms are coming from. So that's one thing you can just write regular HTML forms if you want, or use kind of your own form libraries, but by default they kind of give you React hook form. So whatever.
Okay.
Kind of
So
APIs
somewhere in this library, if I go and research it, I will be able to find how that works.
Yeah.
Don't think I care about it right now. That's fine. We know. Now we know. All right. So I'm logged in, and that should mean that I can go to posts now. And I can. Now I'm going to create a new one. I can now edit. Right? Okay. Very cool. And then when I go back,
so
there it is.
There is kind of a problem with this though, which is that right now anyone can go and sign up and get an account and then start editing everything. So there's two possible ways you can go here. The way you want to go long term is you want to then build in authorization. And so we have RBAC and roles. And so that's already kind of built into the framework. There's like a very long doc that explains like how to do that. But what we can do right now is we can just go into our auth function. So this is in API src functions.
src functions. Got it.
Yeah. And then we're going to go down to sign up options. Yeah. And then basically make that return false instead of db.user.create.
Okay, so now that I've created my user,
you're going to take the ability to create a user away, so that you will still be able to log in with the user you created, but no one else can create a user right now.
Okay. So now, if I go back out, are we still running? We're still running. So I'm going to log out, log in, try to sign up. And then it's like, nah, you can't do that. And we would probably, in a real app, we would obviously build more controls here, but. And I can still log in, so here I am.
Sweet. All right, now we are at the deploy step. So we'll do another setup command, but this time it'll be setup deploy netlify.
Okay, hold on. I want to do one thing because I'm always curious how this step works, which is if I go into this homepage here and we've got our blog post cell. So let's go to the blog post cell, and this is returning one of these. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into a pre, and I want to add a link, and I want that link to be let's do a post, and I'm just going to make it the item.id for ease, and say view post, right? So I make this, I come out here. How do I make this work? Like, what's the Redwood process for doing this sort of thing?
Yeah, so there will be route parameters that you'll have to add into the router file. So if you go look at the router right now, you can already see this with how the posts are set up.
Router routes file.
Yeah, so if you look in the post layout, we have /post and then ID. So you'll basically have something like that. So this is something that is like in the docs. I'll drop this in the chat.
Does that exist? That post show page?
So yeah, this is something that takes a couple steps to kind of do, and I don't really remember how to do it. Okay, so that's right. So you basically just add /ID in brackets after post.
Okay, so I've got post brackets ID, and it looks like I can force it to be an integer here if I want to cast it like that, and then it'll pull up a page, and that page would need to be something like this, which we're not going to build right now. But what would end up happening is we would get this page would then render, and the way that page would render is, would I get the params in here?
So it's kind of like how you have the dot routes already. So you have like routes.login. That's where you would pass it in. So you could, like, if that was the for the post. So you would have like routes.post and then parentheses and then in brackets ID post.id.
Got it. Okay, so project for another time, covered in this doc here that is in the chat. And or wait, that's
not the one. It was
that's not the one.
Yeah, so
this is here's the one. Let me pull this up. This is the one, routing params. And that'll show us how to do that. Okay, great. So we can do that.
That's fine. You asked that last time. I was on also. I was like, we don't really have time for that.
Okay. All right. So we are ready to deploy. Yeah, and you already told me what to do, and I just stopped paying attention. So you're gonna have to tell me one more time. Sorry.
Yeah. So yarn Redwood setup deploy netlify.
Okay. Ready to deploy to netlify.
And then let's go back to looking at our git diffs and look at your redwood.toml.
Redwood.toml.
Yeah. So here what's happening is we have the API URL. So this is how the front end and the back end, like they know how to talk to each other. Because as I was saying, this is like a GraphQL Lambda lith. So that is going to be on your Netlify function route and then / GraphQL because it's a GraphQL endpoint. So you can configure that to whatever you want. You can just have it say like / API if you're hosting it somewhere else. But this is kind of the configuration that needs to change, and that is done for you with the setup deploy command, and then also generates the netlify.toml.
Yes, and this one has your build command, publish directory, where the functions live, dev setup, great, and redirects to send everything through the main function. Okay, cool. So then what should then happen is like now if I run netlify dev, this should also just pick up and run. Will be exciting. Here it goes, here it goes, here it goes.
And then you're going to have two environment variables, the database environment variable, and then it also generated a session secret for the DB auth. So you need both of those in the Netlify project.
Where did it?
In your .env file. So where you originally
I understand.
had yeah.
Okay, so check this out. I'm going to run netlify init. And it's going to let me create and configure a new site on my team. And we'll call this RedwoodJS 1.0, or I guess it'll be one.
Just V1.
Whatever. V1. That's so much better than what I was going to do. All right, here we go. That's going to, I'm just going to let it import because it's already configured. Good. And then I'm going to do netlify env import.env. And hopefully it's not going to show all these on screen. It did. Dang it. All right, I'll have to go roll that secret. But so that then is all now stored so that if I run netlify dev again, check this out. It pulls in the database URL and the session secret now from netlify. But because they're in the environment variable, the .env overrides. So that is very nice. Okay, so give me just a second to roll that.
So actually, there's a command that will just spit out another key for you.
Okay.
Yarn Redwood generate secret, but you're also you don't want to do that on screen.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to run this one. Start off. Okay, there's my secret. I'm going to go over here, get to my .env file.
You hackers, you dirty hackers.
Okay, so that one's already compromised, so y'all can look at it. Let me go change this one. And then I need to go and get a new key for my database because I screwed that up.
And Railway has a button where you can just hit wipe plugin data in your settings, and then it'll wipe the whole thing and also generate a new connection string for you.
Oh, nice. Wipe plugin data. Hold on. Actually, let me show this on screen because that is very cool. So I went to settings, and I'm just hitting wipe plugin data. Wipe data. Get out of here. Hold on to your hats. I really wish that said hold on to your butts. Okay, so I am going to have to rerun my data, right? But what I can do is go to my connect, and then I can just copy this. Nobody can see my secrets.
You want to copy the bottom one, not the top one?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I did
the top one is actually cool, though. It's a whole command to set up pSQL.
Nice. All right, so that is saved. And then now I need to run the command one more time. So first, let me netlify env import.env. And that'll override those. Okay, clearing my screen. And now I can come back over here. And then I need to run yarn redwood prisma migrate dev.
Yeah, and then just leave it like that because you don't give it a name at all.
Okay.
Because it already has the migrations in there. That's going to rerun.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it already will say, okay, you have 2 migrations. I'm going to apply those to your database. Boom, boom.
Nice. Oh, dang it. All right. Just props to the Prisma team. This is very well done and very nice to use. Okay, so that's ready. And then what I can do is checking git add everything. Great. I'm going to git commit m, and we'll say feature ready to deploy. Let's push. And now if I open, should pop this open for us. There it is. It's going to be deploying. And if I go look at my site settings and the environment, we can see that those values are set through that CLI command, but it didn't start building, which makes me wonder if something went wrong with, let me just check here if the Git setup is done. I didn't link a GitHub repository, so that's, I must have like hit a button or something. Let me go back here. And we're going to, it was Redwood.
Yeah, it's one of the things I still always go through the UI to do and copy paste the keys, and so there's where you put your keys in also.
If you need them, I should have stayed there for a second. There's a button that'll let you add environment variables. But I like feeling like a hacker. It makes me feel, like I want to put my
It's
sunglasses
better
on.
for tutorials if you have like a way to just kind of do it with a command, because then it removes the room for error.
And so now we are going to deploy. And let's play a memory game while we wait. It should take just a minute or so.
That's funny. I've never seen this.
Yeah. All right. How good is my memory? Let's find out. Oh boy. Oh no. Yeah. Did everybody see me nail that? All right. Is it done?
Okay, so there's something else we
We're
can do
getting there.
while this is going. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll be able to make it. So if we go back to our project, we're gonna create another branch for the render deploy. Yeah.
Okay.
And then now we're going to run yarn redwood setup deploy render, but then with a dash lowercase d and then none. Yeah, so what that's doing is we can tell it to spin up a Postgres database or a SQLite database like on render for us and connect it to our project. But since we already have a database, we don't want to do that. We're just going to set this up and then we're going to use our own database.
Gotcha. Okay. And so what we're doing here, what we did before is the full serverless deploy. And that's on Netlify. And what we're doing here is the server full deploy, because render is similar to Netlify. It's like you create a Git repo, you connect it, you push, and it'll deploy, but it's for long running servers. So if you needed to have, like if you're building a microservice or in this case, you want your server to be running for a long time, you do it on something like render. I actually use it for the chat bot and everything in the Twitch. The API is using a GraphQL subscription, which requires a long running server, and that is run in render.
Nice.
Okay.
And then that created a render.yaml file, and this is the only thing we need to make sure that it knows how to do the rewrite. So the route redirect for your functions.
Yeah, I just pulled everything off screen. Let me make sure I close that yet. Env is closed. Okay, so go into render.
Yeah, and then where it says replace with API URL under next to destination.
Destination replace with API URL.
Yeah, so change that to https:// and then so this is where hopefully it's going to be okay. Yeah, so I think as long as we sync up these names correctly, this will work. So do Redwood Redwood / LWJ, or sorry, dash, not slash. Yeah, and then dash API. Yep. .onrender.com. Okay. Yeah, so basically what this is when we spin up this project on render, it's going to give us this URL for the API, and so you just have to make sure that your front end knows what it is. And this is going to be different depending on what your project name is.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah. And then there's just one other thing we gotta do, which is cores. And this is a little obnoxious, but this is something you gotta do. So we're going to go to our API SRC functions folder. So
API SRC functions.
yeah, and then graphql.js. Yeah. And then under services, add in cores. Yeah. And then colon, and then make like an object. Yeah. And then it'll be origin. Yeah. And so that's going to be the exact thing you just wrote, except web instead of API. Yeah. So
I got you.
Yeah. So copy paste the thing
here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just copy paste that whole thing. Yep.
Here.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Web.
And then get rid of the / star. Yeah, just like that. And then add credentials include. Yeah, so this is the reason why we need to configure this is that we're doing the DB auth thing. We're passing this cookie back and forth. So if we didn't have any auth, we wouldn't need to do this. There wouldn't be any CORS issues. But this is because like we actually have this whole auth setup. So
and we're moving it between the web and the API. So these need to be able to talk, and these become cross origin because these are two different websites.
Yep. And then now there's an auth file right next to GraphQL file in your functions folder.
Do I need to copy paste this?
Yeah, sure. That's basically give you a similar thing.
And
then go to auth handler.
Auth handler.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. So then just plop it in under auth fields. Yeah, and then make credentials say true, and without the, yeah, just like that.
Okay.
And then I think and then one other thing is under cookie, change same site to none. Okay. I think that's everything on the back end. Then we just got to do one thing in our API.js file, or sorry, app.js. So that's in web SRC. Yeah.
Okay.
And then where it says auth provider, you're going to add in, actually, go back to the README. Let's just grab this whole thing from the README.
Okay.
And then scroll almost all the way to the bottom. Yeah. That last thing. Yeah, you just did that. Yeah, that thing. Just grab that whole app thing and replace it with your current app.
Okay. Okay, so let's go here. And then I'm going to go to app. And what I'm changing.
Yep, that whole guy. Yep. Yeah, so what happens is we're just adding in the config. So for the credentials, and then you also have to do a thing for Apollo to make Apollo happy.
Got it. Okay. So basically we're just saying, because we're making cross-origin requests, we just have to update these two pieces. All right. That makes sense. And then I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember how to deploy to render.
Yeah, so luckily we're all set up for the most part. So just push this up onto the render branch that you've got.
Okay.
Cool. And then that's probably done also.
This is done. Yeah, it's been done for a bit. It took, let's see, how long did it take for the first deploy? 2.5 minutes for the first deploy. Follow-up should be faster because things will be cached. And let's just double check. It should all be running as expected. Okay, log in. Oh, this isn't going to let me sign up, is it?
Yeah, you can't sign up. You can just log in.
It's not hooked up to my database anymore because I didn't.
Hold on, go back.
That's
right, because we had to
roll
wipe the database. That's funny.
Okay. So we'll have to fix that later. But for now, this is doing what we want. So it's
and it shows empty, so it knows there's a blank database there. Otherwise, it would show an error. So yeah.
And then I have render here. So this is my actual render account that has this is the Socket Studio API. That's what powers the stream overlay. And I need to create new, right?
So you're gonna do new blueprint.
New blueprint.
Yeah, this is because we have the render.yaml file, and you might need to, depending on how your permissions are set, you might need to click GitHub and then give it permissions to that specific repo.
Yup. Where's my? I'm in too many orgs at this point. Install. Okay. Let me pull this off screen for a second. And okay, I'm logged in. And I can choose this one now.
And then give it the name Redwood-LWJ. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then
Branches render.
Yeah.
Okay. It's gonna create both of these.
Yeah.
Good.
So hit apply, and then now we just got to add in the environment variables. And so there's actually something they let you just feed it like a .env file, which is kind of cool. But go to your dashboard.
Am I doing some?
Yeah. So
is it done?
This is kind of weird. Yeah. It started already, and it doesn't really give you a lot of good feedback. So just go back to dashboard.
Okay.
And then
here
go
it goes.
to
All right.
Yeah. And then go to API, and this is where we're going to put in the environment variables. So under environment, now you can do it through there, or you can do secret. So go down to secret files. Yeah, and just do that, and then copy paste what's in your .env into that.
I just drop in the.
You don't want to do that off screen.
Yeah. All right. So go to
and it's also, And what we're doing a couple things that we shouldn't be doing right now for the sake of the demo is that what you should do each time you do this is generate a different session secret. And that's what you would want to do for these different deployment providers. But right now, we're just going to use the same one because it'll be quicker and easier to do.
And importantly, I'm probably, because it's not free, I'm probably not going to keep this render deployment up.
That's actually not true. They have a free tier now.
Oh, they do. That's great news. I didn't realize they had a free tier now.
It's very new. It's only like a couple months old. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, that's great news. Cool. So, all right, I've saved my secret file here.
Okay, cool. And then just make sure the build reran. It should tell you go to events.
Events.
Yeah.
Deploy canceled. Another deploy started.
Okay, cool. So that's gonna take a while. This thing, it takes like 10 minutes to build. So hopefully it'll build before the hour is up. But yeah, so questions, reactions, this is
yeah. So chat, if you've got questions, now's the time. What are you feeling?
And then have things been like coming back as you've been doing this, or did it feel like learning Redwood a whole second time?
I mean, my experience with Redwood has actually been limited to the time that I've spent with you. So I would say I remembered the generate commands. I think this is what's interesting is Redwood embraces a school of thought that lines up with Rails, lines up with Angular, which is the idea of convention over code. So you don't write code. You tell the generator, the CLI, what you want to do, and it generates most of your code for you, and then you do light customization to that. And that is something that I think is really interesting, because what it leads to is when I go into an Angular code base, and presumably when I go into a Redwood code base, things are going to be in the same places. Files are going to be organized in the same way. The routers are going to be set up the same way. I'm not going to have to try to figure out what is this web team style to be able to start piecing together how their apps work, because a lot of the generation just makes those decisions for you. It makes things very predictable and set up. And so the good, the upside of that is just extreme portability of skill. If I become a Redwood dev, I can go to any team working with Redwood, and I'm going to be fairly familiar with the code base before I even open it up, just because so much of that convention is handled by the CLI. I like that about generators, because it gives you that predictability and that safety. It's the things that I like about those about that approach. The trade-off is in a just plain React code base, what you would see is somebody kind of does whatever they want. They set up their own file folder structures, their own naming conventions. Everything's kind of organized a different way. And that means that each React code base is extremely flexible. You can build whatever you want in there, but also each code base is an extremely unique animal. And typically you're going to find that it takes a little bit longer to get familiar with that code base. So that tends to be my general, like, the trade-offs, right? If I'm working on a big team, especially if I'm working on a team that's people who don't necessarily want to be web devs, like when I was at IBM, a lot of the people there were writing UIs not because that was their job, but because it was a thing that had to happen as part of their other development duties. And having something that automatically sets them up with good practices and good code and strong conventions is such a power up for teams like that. I honestly think that's one of the reasons why Angular is so popular in the enterprise, is because it provides that convention where things are predictable. You're not asking, an engineer who's primarily working in Java and just got stuck with a ticket to build a UI to go out and figure out how to write a good UI. They just, Angular generate this, Angular generate that. And Redwood looks like it's solving that problem in a way that's more, I guess, more like batteries included, because I think that's something that Angular has struggled with a little bit. And I think they're working on solutions. I actually think I heard rumors that some cool stuff is coming with Angular. So, stay tuned. Maybe we'll see something on the show. But the power of being able to go to your team and say, just use the Redwood generator. It's going to look the way you want. It's going to have accessibility baked in. It's going to have best practices. You're going to set the meta tags. That's really powerful to a team that is, like, we're not talking about web artists here, right? We're talking about people who need to ship production code and they need to do it quickly and they've got 10 million things on their plate. If you ask those people to lovingly handcraft code, they're going to take shortcuts and you're going to end up with problems. If you give them a generator like this, they're going to get to a good outcome. And I think that's a big trade-off to consider when you're weighing, like, which tool you're going to build something with. But we got some good questions here. And let's see. So the first one is more of a meta question. Tony's asking, what is the generator that Redwood's using?
Yeah, so I dropped a bunch of links in response to that question. So it's using Yargs. And
Got it.
You can, if you basically go into the Redwood code base, you can create your own kind of generators. There was a point when we were trying to create a generate command, I think, so you can actually like generate your own generators or something like that. I don't think that ever really like kind of worked out. But if you just like look at the code, like, you can see how we set up our generators and you can modify them. And if you want to, like, if there's some sort of generator you want, that it's very easy to contribute to. That's why it's kind of like grows all these ways to generate all this stuff now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and chaotic good boy, which I have to imagine that avatar is a dog, like chaotic good boy. It's got to be a dog, like a small dog. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I think the chaotic good boy says it's funny that this criticism is levied against React by teams I was on that chose to use Angular. However, you can go wild with Angular too. That is true. Like, with sufficient effort, you can make any code base utterly off the wall wild. But I think the difference is where the defaults lie, right? Like, I think, Anthony, you and I have talked about this before. The importance here is, where are the defaults, right? Which parts of the machine are you being handed right out of the gate that you have to consider, right? And you mentioned that with Redwood, with Rails, what you're getting is a lot of batteries included. You don't have to make this decision type guidance. And I think that when that's the default, it leads to, on average, because code cowboys are always going to be there. There's always going to be somebody stoked to go in and just customize everything completely. But on average, you're going to get a really good outcome here.
Rob is correcting me in the chat. We do have the generate generator command, but it's setup generator.
Okay. All right. Cool.
He said he lost the battle on the generate namespace.
generator. Great. Let's see. World of Warcraft corgi pet. Oh boy. We do have a generator. That is great. So, okay, cool. I don't even know if I have any other questions. So how about this? While we're waiting for this to finish deploying, where should people go if they want to take next steps? What resources should they be looking at?
Yeah, RedwoodJS is going to be a good place for kind of revamping and consolidating docs and tutorials, because we have two in-depth tutorials, like one that will walk us through pretty much everything we did today, along with a contact form and layouts, which we kind of skipped those steps. But the first tutorial is kind of all that, and the second tutorial goes into like testing and storybook and all those other files that were being generated, because you're also automatically configured to like run tests and to set up your storybook and do all that. And then we then have all these kind of individual doc pages for things just like little subjects, like and how to configure environment variables, or how to do like all the different deploys we have. And so that is all now merged into like one site, which is nice. Yeah.
Nice. This is, and I see Rob is saying this is a Docusaurus site. That is very cool.
Yep.
So we'll drop this in here. Anywhere else people should go check out?
So we have, I mean, all this will be on redwoodjs.com, but we have a Discord, we have a discourse forum, we have a Twitter account where you can follow us. We have a newsletter. Let me grab the newsletter. That's actually something that is just kicking back up.
Nice, nice.
There we go.
And let's go peek at render. How's that going? No pending migrations. Okay, so we got some links dropping in here. Let me copy this one. So this is curated. Now, what is curated? Is that the newsletter system?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly
nice.
how they set that up, but yeah, we had one like over a year ago, and then this is kind of like our newly put together one. And yeah, so if you check out the first issue, actually at the very end, we have this like Heroes of Redwood thing. Yeah, so that's Danny. So a little bit further down. Yeah, so they kind of like someone on the team, and they highlight them and kind of give them a chance to like tell their story and talk about what they do and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool.
I love that. That's super fun. Okay, cool. So this is a cool place to go get information. And I assume this is probably one of the first places that people are going to hear about things, unless they're like in the GitHub actually watching development, right?
Yeah, here and the Twitter would be the main places.
Cool. All right. So I think we're almost done here. It looks like it's, oh wait, does that mean done?
Hopefully. I mean, check it out.
All right. Now to check it out, now it says it's still in progress. I'm gonna reload the page just in case it says it's live. Okay.
Yeah.
And to see that,
so you want to see the web one, not the API one. So go back to web. So go to your dashboard. Yeah.
Dashboard, web.
Yeah, because they're separate services. Like one's a static front end and one's actually a web service thing.
Got it. Okay. So we got, looks like Redwood doesn't like something about that API response. Let's peek at it and see if
we probably just messed something up in the,
we messed something up. It looks like
cookies.
Response headers. It's a miss. Not sure. Yeah, it's just straight up 404ing. So we did something wrong. But that's, oh, is it because it's not does it need to be like a prime URL? That would mean that API isn't working.
Yeah, that's an issue. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, okay, so we'd have to go fix that. We don't have time to fix that right now.
Yeah, I was trying to compress it all into a couple steps. So normally you deploy it, then you get your link, then you put your link into your redirect. But I tried to jump the gun on that. But yeah, and then the original repo that you forked from has the complete render project as well. But I'm pretty sure all the code is basically good. You just got to fix the domains.
Yeah, if we get these domains fixed, like the problem was a 404, not something else. So that'll clean it up. All right. So with that being said, we are going to jump back out here and just remind everyone that this episode, like every episode, has been live captioned. We've had Amanda from White Coat Captioning here with us all day, and that is made possible through support from our sponsors. We've got Netlify, NX, and Backlight all kicking in to make this show more accessible to more people, which I appreciate very, very much. While you're clicking things on the website, make sure you go and check out the schedule. We've got a bunch of incredible stuff coming up, including Hakon coming on to teach us about how to make an e-commerce site that gets a page speed of 100. That is a hard thing to do, and we're going to talk about how to do that using Remix and Crystallize, it looks like. And then we've got command bar, TRPC, dynamic images, a whole bunch of stuff. I've got things in my email that I haven't posted up yet, so stay tuned. Lots of good stuff coming up. Make sure you go and give Anthony a follow on Twitter. Anthony, any parting words for the chat before we call this one done?
And just thank you for having me. I hope people check out Redwood. I've gotten a lot of use out of it throughout my time and just have really enjoyed the community and just learning alongside everyone and getting to build cool stuff. So yeah, check it out.
Awesome. All right, y'all. We are going to oh no, nobody's live. Chat, who should we raid? I'm gonna take us offline here and call this one over, but let me know who we should raid and we'll go find somebody to raid. Anthony, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.